Hi, my name is Sam Johnson and I'm a voice teacher. Today I'm going to be reacting to and analyzing LP performing Lost on You in a live session. Cool vibe so far.
When you get older, plainer, saner, when you remember all the danger we came from.
It almost sounds like she's singing with a cold. A lot of times people start, I can't do it very well, but they cut off every little bit of nasality and it kind of sounds like there's just a cold going on with everything. It's a really interesting sound and it's continuous all the way through. So it sounds like this singer from the moment that it starts. I'm assuming if she continues to sound like this, I'm assuming that that wasn't just like a bit that she was doing.
Burning like embers, falling tender, longing for the days of no surrender years ago. And will you know? So smoke 'em if you got 'em, 'cause it's going down.
Such an interesting tone.
All I ever wanted was you. I'll never get to heaven 'cause I don't know how. Let's raise our glass up to all the things I've lost on you. Oh, tell me I've been lost on you. Oh.
I've never really heard a singer like this before. There's quite a bit of air getting through. You hear that like at the end of phrases, sometimes there was one phrase at least where it looked like she was actually running out of air. Most of it hasn't been much of a problem. She's figured out how to get this style of sound without exhausting her tank every single time that she goes to sing something. The sound that has a little bit of rough extra noise to it from just getting a lot of air through without as even a vocal cord resistance. Usually when you're in that kind of a situation, you'll be losing your breath a lot of the time. I think that she's figured out how to mitigate that so she can get this sound and also continue to get this sound. And there are times that it goes into more of a full, moderate vocal cord closure situation where it's not, you know, an excess amount of air getting through. There are times that she actually has a really clear sound. And going back and forth between those two, like I always say, is super interesting. It just lets you see the contrast between two parts of someone's voice, something that's a little bit more powerful or a little bit more clear or has a little bit more of a rough rasp to it. And going back and forth between those, I think is a really cool way to showcase more parts of your voice where you're not just wearing the same tone all the way through your song. Yeah, like that stuff sounds clear and easy. But then at the end, it just feels like it collapsed on it a little bit. And maybe that's to get the sound. I don't know if that's going to be hard in the long run. Sometimes if we start collapsing something, and I'm not sure exactly what it was, but the sound wasn't continuous all the way to the end of the sound. Something changed near the end of it. And the changes that I hear, I associate with some sort of tension or running out of air and squeezing in a weird way, just some sort of change. The thing that's important to ask is whether that change was necessary to get the sound that they wanted, or whether that change was in fact making it more difficult to continue, and it was a sound that they didn't want. So it's just things like that to start weighing in when you get to this level of performance where you have to decide, you know, is it gonna be worth it to make this sound 1,000 times when I perform this and do it all the time over and over? And is it gonna wear me out to do that? I don't think that just this one little bit is going to, but that's where you start asking questions, is where things become more of a, your body has to do it in a certain way rather than a choice that you're making. That sounds really cool.
And I could see the machinations, understand the toil of expectations in your mind. that you love me more than hate me all the time, then you're still mine. So smoke.
So that's chest voice, because it's low enough that you're probably going to feel it in your chest. So most people are going to call that chest voice. Is it as full of a chest voice as some people ask for? No, not at all. It's not nearly as heavy as a lot of people even speak. Most people tend to speak in chest voice, the coordination that people call chest voice, where if you're speaking and you put your hand on your chest, you'd probably feel a little bit of vibrations happening. That's pretty much where the term chest voice comes from. So yes, I do think that this was in chest voice because she's probably feeling it in her chest when she sings this stuff. It's not very heavy though, which I think is helping for the rest of her style, because when she goes up higher, she doesn't have excess weight to pull up. She's starting in her low notes with a pretty balanced sound, even though it's kind of weird. It's kind of like a funky sound or a sound that hasn't been used as much before, which is way cool. I mean, you have to find what makes you you, and that's really cool. But she doesn't start it really, really heavy. A lot of singers would start that a lot heavier, and then when they start going to the higher notes, get increasingly heavier. Because she's starting at a place that's not heavy to begin with, she's able to just hold on to that same amount of resistance as she goes higher, and the weird changes that she's making of having a little bit of extra air through one part, or just resisting a little bit too much for a second. Actually, I don't hear her do that as much as just getting a lot more air at some parts of this. Those parts don't matter as much because she's already in a pretty good place up at the top, because she's not pulling a ton of weight up. So I really do think that rather than focusing on how someone sings high notes, if you focus on how they approach their high notes and where they sing when they say it's easy, usually you can see where they're gonna hold and how they're going to approach their high note to begin with. And so if I heard someone vocalizing like this at the bottom of their range or in the middle of their range, I'd probably feel pretty good about their ability to start going towards high notes, because it doesn't sound hard, it just sounds light, which is a characteristic that makes higher notes usually a little bit easier. And it is kind of whiny. Who cares? One, it's helping her achieve this sound. So I think that she's doing a great job. I think it's a nice performance, and it sounds really cool and interesting. Watching her, I am just seeing so much activity in her neck that I would be curious to see if she could make some of these sounds without as much of that activity. Or I'd be curious to hear from her exactly what this feels like. That's the thing about what I'm doing. I mean, obviously it's all speculation and saying what I feel like this usually would be. Every single person's different, and everyone's going to have a different view of their reality and how to express it and just what their goals are. Everyone is different. And voice training, just like any other instrument, has to take whatever that person is right now. Anyway, I don't know if this is easy for her. I don't know if it feels easy or if she's losing her voice at times. That's something that I would really need to know. Just watching this, I think that it would be a good question to ask, because I do hear at the end of every single phrase just a little bit of weird tension starting to creep in. And I don't know if that's going to affect in the long term. The same thing with just all of this musculature in the neck. I don't know if it's going to affect, because the sound sounds pretty good. I don't know if that's because they went in and have done some nice fixes with computers or anything. Like, I don't know what she sounds like in my front room, but it sounds easy. But then other parts of it totally don't make me think it's easy at all. So it's completely impossible without knowing her perception of what it feels like to give any good advice with it. Because I don't want to mess up this sound, and it's such an interesting sound that if it's not hurting, and if it's not making you lose your voice after going through it once or twice or singing through a set, then it's probably not worth changing the sound. Like, it's just that simple of a question. If it's sustainable and it's marketable and that's what your fan base likes, it's probably not worth changing the sound too much. I don't know if it is sustainable though, so that's a question to ask. I'm leaning towards it probably is. And that's just because of my ears. Just what I'm hearing rather than what I'm seeing has enough clarity and enough ease in the sound that I don't think that it's going to be a huge issue. Again, it's all speculation. And that going between the more whoopy, woo 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 type sound at the very top and the more yelly, whoa, 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 it's kind of cool going back and forth between them. And it actually makes me feel a little bit better about her voice just in the future. Because when she does that ooh type stuff at the top, I didn't hear any difficulty having her chords come together or making an easy, clear sound. There wasn't that extra air noise getting through. It was just a nice balanced phonation. When she went to the she did spread a little bit more, but it was clear still. You know, I think that she does have the ability to go between a more clear sound, and I hope that the one that she has found feels just as easy as that one. But it's really promising when you're able to hear someone go into a place that is very traditionally easy sounding when they've been doing things that slap the face of tradition for a second. It's good to hear them to be able to go back to it. Just that ability shows that they're probably aware enough of their voice that if it was hurting them, they know how to kind of mitigate that. And they have other options if it starts becoming a problem. Yeah, her tongue actually looks pretty great. That's a cool performance. The more that I watch it, everything feels like it's a choice enough and that she has other options. I'm not like worried about this. I think that she's going to be able to have a pretty easy career in that like she won't wreck her voice. But I think that it's worth thinking about more, especially when you're using sounds that are a little bit more erratic. It's worth going to like an ENT and getting scoped and getting pictures taken regularly, every year even. I'm not sure exactly how often they're recommending. I think for a minute it was every year, but go talk to an ENT if that's a thing that you can afford to do. And if you're making music like this, or if you're making music at all, but especially like this, get a baseline every year. You can check in and see if anything has physically changed. If it has, and you're able to kind of tie that to actions that you've made with your voice, then you know what you need to work on. And that's really good information. But especially when you start walking on the line of sounds that could get hard. When you're working with sounds that could get hard like this, it's important to check up and not just throw everything else out because you're throwing out some things of traditional vocal performance or vocal technique. Just because you're not singing like bel canto doesn't mean that you don't have the resources available to someone who's singing bel canto. And so it's important to take advantage of those and still work with coaches, because there are good voice teachers who can just make sure that this is going to keep working for you. And all of those things are available for people outside of the traditional world where people think that they need to have voice instruction. Because I know in classical music, in musical theater, it's kind of expected at this point that you're just going to get vocal instruction. But when you get into rock music, there still seems to be a group of people that don't want it, or it's not punk rock enough to have instruction. And it's just neglectful, because when you're making sounds like that, the danger of causing something that you'll actually have to deal with surgery or therapy or something, it's a little bit higher than when you're singing other styles of music. It just is, because like people, when they start adding distortion, can mess things up a little bit easier. There's danger all over, but go see your doctors. It's really good. Let everyone work as a team. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe. Click the bell notification if you're interested in seeing any more of my videos in the future. And comment below what you thought about this. Was I on base with this? Do you think that this is a sound that's going to be sustainable? What are your thoughts on this singer? And also, if you're interested in signing up for lessons with me, go check out my website, vocalease.net. Thank you.